Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing well. So today I'm going to be taking a request from a subscriber of mine. I recently got a message from one of my subscribers basically telling me that my videos are responsible for him getting reintroduced and interested again in Star Wars. And that was really awesome news. It's good to know that my videos are getting people hyped about looking at Star Wars from beyond just the film perspective, you know. And he sort of requested for me to make a video talking about the novels and other things from the expanded universe I'd recommend to those fans who really only know about the movies. And the reason for this is because he's really interested in learning about the Star Wars universe, but there's just so much material out there, it's kind of hard to pick a starting point. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. Um, I'm going to attempt to list these sources, which range from several different forms of media, into a chronological sense. I don't mean dates of release or publication, I just mean in terms of the content and where it takes place in the Star Wars timeline. So, off we go then. At the start of the list, no surprises here whatsoever, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Um, I know, honestly, I talk about this game all the time, and the reason for that is because it's the single most immersive and complete experience that I think a Star Wars fan can enjoy. It's got a solid story, features brilliant characters, it's intelligently written, so intelligently written that it really does manage to impress me even now after multiple playthroughs. I wasn't always such a Star Wars fan. I always liked the original films, of course, but I really didn't begin to love the expanded universe until after I played this game the first time. It really showed me what Star Wars is capable of, or what it could and should be most of the time. And since it takes place 4,000 years before the films do, it's a really great starting point for fans of the films who want to begin looking at the EU. This is a self-contained story which doesn't require you to have such an expansive knowledge in order to enjoy it. It tells you everything you need to know. And it talks about history that takes place even before this game, so it's really, really a good place to start. With its amazing characters, brilliant gameplay, diverse worlds, incredible music, some of the best music ever, in my opinion, famous plot twist, excellent voice acting, and solid combat engine, this game really is my all-time favorite. The game allows you to become a Jedi or a Sith, of course, and no game I've ever played really represents this experience quite as well as this game did. It's absolutely stunning. Going hand in hand with that, the next thing on the list would be Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. I've already done a pretty thorough review of this, although it does contain spoilers, so you may not want to watch that game or watch that video until after you play the game. But the only flaws that game really has are related to sketchy gameplay issues and a vague and underdeveloped storyline. But in terms of exploration of the Star Wars universe and understanding the philosophy of the Sith and getting into the minds of characters like bounty hunters and crime lords and political adversaries and soldiers, farmers, commoners, and champions of the Republic, this game really does shine above all else. It equals the first game in that area. It's a very cerebral game. It's all about character interaction and philosophy and big ideas and tone and mood and atmosphere. And it's every bit as interesting, moving, and immersive as the original game, and I highly recommend it. Next thing on the list, in terms of chronology, would be the Darth Bane Path of Destruction novel. Staged 1,000 years before the films, this novel begins the incredible story of Darth Bane, who I consider to be the greatest Dark Lord of the Sith in the galaxy's history. He's a very powerful Sith Lord, but that's not why I like him. I'm somehow able to feel for this character and actually sympathize with him and his goals, despite the fact that he is sinister. I can't do that with the Emperor. He's just an evil guy. I can't do that with Darth Maul. He has no character in the film. He's not evil for the sake of being evil, this character, Darth Bane. He's an incredibly human character, and there's a reason for every single decision he makes and the philosophy that he builds around himself. And he just happens to be responsible for shaping the Sith Order into the entity that it is in, or that it was, when Palpatine enacted his plan against the Jedi in the films, of course. So, the series was completed with an additional 2 books, all written by Drew Karpyshyn, who was also the lead writer for the original Knights of the Old Republic games. And so, in my opinion, this is undoubtedly the best series of Star Wars novels out there. Go check it out. Next on the list, in terms of chronology, we're skipping quite a period of time. The Jedi Apprentice series, which take place in the years before The Phantom Menace. Actually, these were the very first Star Wars novels I ever read, I think. There are 18 or 19 books, I can't quite remember, in the series as a whole. But I read, the first novel I read in the series was actually, I read the series out of order, let's just say that. But all but the first novel in the series were written by Jude Watson. The first book was written by Dave Wolverton, I believe. And I actually read the 7th book in the series first. It was called The Captive Temple, and it was a really thrilling book for a children's story. And although I didn't exactly understand everything that was going on because I'd started, toward the middle of the series, once I realized how many other novels there were, I began reading them in order. And although these stories are a bit simple in nature, at least in comparison with more adult novels like Darth Bane, for example, they are very good considering they're meant for children. And they really did a good job of forging the relationship and bond between Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And each book was enjoyable and well written. I highly recommend them. I've already done a review of this book before, but Darth Maul Shadowhunter is next on the list, and it's worth noting that this book really serves as a kind of The Phantom Menace Part 1, if you will. It sets up the groundwork behind the Trade Federation's invasion of Naboo with a thrilling chase very similar in nature to the story of the first Terminator film. Darth Maul's character evolves a bit. A young Jedi Padawan becomes a very sympathetic and moving protagonist. A downtrodden information broker finds himself in a desperate situation, even as he grapples with his fall from grace and the hard times that have fallen on him through his connection in the past to the Jedi Order. And now he has to work with one in order to survive against this threat from Darth Maul, who's come to Coruscant with an assassination mission. And the book even manages to make Viceroy Nute Gunray of the Trade Federation a somewhat interesting and relatable character. It's extremely well written by Michael Reeves, and it tells a great story. Next on the list would be the Dark Horse Comics Clone Wars comic series. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one, because I plan to review this series in full later on in the near future. But to put it simply, it's the best representation of the Clone Wars in my opinion. It's very adult, it's very logical, it's very well illustrated. It has an incredible team of writers behind it. It also features a ton of brilliant characters, and I can't say enough good things about it. So you want to check that one out if you get the chance. There's about 9 volumes in all. Star Wars Clone Wars, the micro series, developed by a team at Cartoon Network headed by Gendy Tartakovsky. This cartoon really just served as a great source of entertainment and contains some really amazing hand-drawn animation and fight sequences and action sequences. It's got a simple but engaging story, and the events of the second season encompass the events of the opening sequence for Revenge of the Sith. And it's just a really quality product, easily accessible to anybody who's just seen the films. You can find all the DVDs, or both DVDs, easily on eBay or something of that sort, so you want to track that down if you can. Going hand in hand with that, Labyrinth of Evil is the next novel on my list, and that is akin to Darth Maul Shadowhunter's status as The Phantom Menace Part 1. This is sort of Revenge of the Sith Part 1. It's a different, and in actuality better, version of the cartoon I just mentioned, but it also shows the investigation of the Jedi as they search for the Sith Lord Darth Sidious and how close they come to discovering he was in fact Chancellor Palpatine himself. In the novels you get a much better idea of the mentality behind the decisions each character makes, And in the films, the Jedi sort of just sit around debating, what's going on. But in the books, you really see the proactive stance they're taking in this war effort. And this novel was great for that. It's also the first book that explicitly revealed General Grievous's backstory. It's a really amazing backstory. It's very tragic, in fact. Unfortunately, he comes across as a very superficial character in the films. and even in the cartoon where he made his debut. But the novel really humanizes him in a way. It makes him a much more tragic figure. This was written by James Luceno, and if you can find it, then you really should give it a read because it has some great information in it that's related directly to the films. And then, of course, Star Wars Episode 3, the novelization. I just talked about this. It's written by Matthew Stover. The book is a retelling of George Lucas's film. It was released shortly before the film itself hit theaters. It was the review I did directly prior to this video. So if you look up in the uploaded videos menu, you can watch it there if you haven't already. I consider it to be the definitive version of the Revenge of the Sith story, and it's the second best Clone Wars novels out there in my opinion. The first being Shatterpoint, also by Matthew Stover. So the events which take place during and after the original films in that time period are in fact my least favorite ones. But it's not in terms of quality, it's just that the content doesn't interest me as much. However, I do recommend the famous Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn. It's highly regarded as the series that really was responsible for catapulting the EU and led to a resurgence in interest in the expanded universe back in the early 90s before the prequels were even on the way. It's fantastic. And lastly, not really a novel or even a story or anything, but The Jedi Verse Sith, The Essential Guide to the Force is an excellent book. It's a great sort of encyclopedia of all things related to both of those orders. Because although the galaxy is made up of a ton of different species and political groups and, just bodies of people, the Jedi and Sith are really the two orders that have chronicled and shaped the events of the galaxy as they are consistently throughout the Star Wars timeline. And the book's great for getting an overview of the important historical time periods as well as for learning the chronology of those events and of course about the Force itself. Okay, so I just want to make it clear that this list really is simply one that encompasses good starting points for anybody who is just trying to get into the Star Wars expanded universe. There are plenty of books that are excellent, like Shatterpoint, which I didn't mention. And then there are other books that are like, I just haven't finished reading them in their entirety, and so I can't honestly recommend them to anybody, like the X-Wing series or the Republic Commando series or the Legacy of the Force novels. Those are out there. I hear good things about them, but I haven't read them all. So the entries on my list are just my own personal recommendations for newcomers. So that's it. I hope you'll all check out these various entries from the expanded universe if you're interested in looking beyond the movies. They're all great, in my opinion, and thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.